All right, here we are at the second video in session 3. Let's take a look today at airport operations. Um, there are several different frequencies that you can get information on around airports. But let's talk about some of the biggest ones first. First of all, it's not even listed up here, but at a controlled airport, you're going to obviously have a tower and a ground control frequency. So the ground control frequency handles everything on the ground, any movement on the ground on the airport services that are restricted from just regular vehicles running back and forth. So any place where you're getting ready to get on a runway or crossing off of a ramp into a taxiway or any of those areas, as soon as you're in an area where it requires you to get clearance to operate, that's handled by ground control. Then once an aircraft is ready to get its feet on the runway and start taking off, that is all controlled by the tower, as well as all operations in the air around the airport within the controlled airspace. So alongside of those two, which like I said are not listed here, we also have an ATIS, which is your Automated Terminal Information System. So if you want to get a brief set of information about an airport that you may be operating near, if you have a two-way communication system or even just an aviation receiving device, you can listen in on the, tune into the channel for the ATIS at that airport if it has one, and find out what's the weather, the brief on the weather, what runways are in use, and any kind of special information or NOTAMs that might be involved around that airport. You can pick all that up. Now, that information is updated hourly, and along with it comes an IACO code. So the phonetic alphabet code that lets you know that you may have picked up a different time. So let me explain that. First of all, the first time you open the radio and you listen to ATIS, you're not going to know when that was put out. So you don't know when a new one, an update, is coming necessarily. So you listen, and at the end or the beginning of each each transmission of ATIS, they will tell you a letter of the alphabet. So they might say information alpha, and then the next time one comes out, it would be information bravo, and so on. So that's how you can tell if you have the latest updated information. The first time you listen to it, you should scribble down what letter of the alphabet it was on at the time, and then as you may be in the area longer than an hour, you may want to continue to go back to that to make sure you're getting the latest updated information, and that letter of the alphabet would be what tells you. There's also a CTAF channel, and that would be at uncontrolled airports or at controlled airports that operate part-time. So that was something we haven't discussed till now, but controlled airports, airports that have a control tower that may be controlled airspace, may at some point in the day become non-controlled airspace. A lot of times, Class D or dinky airports will only operate their tower for part of the day, maybe half the day, maybe 8 hours, but nonetheless, they'll be up and running. And when they're up and running, you would have to, tune into ground control and tower frequencies. But if it's after hours for that tower, and we're going to show you how to go find that information, but if it happens to be after hours, then sometimes that airspace might go from Delta to Echo airspace, or it may just stay, or it may actually go to Gulf airspace. But again, that information is also available out there. I'm going to tell you more about how to find all that as we continue on with different airspace procedures and etc. So the CTAF channel goes into effect anytime that the tower is down or at uncontrolled airports where they have a frequency. So this is a frequency where pilots will talk with one another so that they're able to coordinate their landings and their takeoffs and entries to the pattern and those types of things. So that's a good thing to listen to, especially if you're at an uncontrolled airport, because as a drone pilot nowadays, you're allowed to be closer to the airports, and you could accidentally get into, a situation where you might get into a collision with an aircraft if you're not careful. So monitoring the CTAF channel at an uncontrolled airport is a very, very much a good thing. So you should definitely do that. Standard pattern at uncontrolled airports. We're going to talk more about that a little bit later on. But standard pattern is left turns. So they usually make a nice pretty box or a straight in to a runway at controlled airports for the most part. But at uncontrolled airports, piloted airplanes are more concerned with entering into this box-shaped turning pattern for or for them to get to the airport. And so the standard pattern is for them to make left turns. Just kind of an intro information for you now. We're going to get way more into that a little bit later on. Radio procedures. Your radio procedures information, for one, you need to know those IACO codes, the alphabet, and you need to know some of these basic terminologies that you find on page 5-7. Down the right side of the page there, they start with acknowledge, and then they go all the way through without delay. A couple of them that I want to key you in on here in this intro are affirmative, which means yes, standby, which means just to hold on, negative, meaning no, Wilco, which means I will comply. And then two of them that get confused quite often are the immediately versus without delay. So immediately is more of an emergent piece of information. That's where ATC or pilots are communicating with one another, and they're telling somebody they need to do something immediately, and this is usually to avoid a hazardous situation or possibly where they're going to intersect with each other. So they may have to tell somebody we need something done immediately. Without delay is a sense of urgency, but it's a little bit less than immediately. So if they're telling somebody to do something without delay, they mean for them to just get moving. This could mean a pilot maybe took the runway, they were cleared for takeoff, but they may clear them for takeoff without delay because there may be other airplanes that are inbound for landing, so they don't want the pilot to dilly-dally on the runway. They want them to get taking off as soon as possible. Whereas if they told them immediately, that means there isn't even a moment to breathe. You've got to go. So that's the difference, and I wanted to point those out because the rest of it all makes sense. It's pretty easy stuff, but a lot of people get confused on the difference between immediately and without delay. Let's take a close look at the airport, and as you can see the airport. You can see where the planes are parked. Those are called ramps. In this particular picture, you can see that they're kind of a little bit different color. And then you see some darker colored movement areas there that look like roads, and those are the taxiways. So the taxiways lead you to and from the ramps, to and from the runways, and that's their only job, is to get the planes from the ramp to the runway or from the runway to the ramp. Over here on the upper left side of the picture, you can see the two long straight strips. On the right one, you see it's a little bit shorter, but you see there's some planes on it. So those planes could be landing, and I say no, they can't be landing. They could have landed, but it looks to me like there's a couple of different planes maybe on that right-hand side runway, which may indicate they could be using it as a taxiway. And really, that's up to the tower, up to the ground controllers rather, as to how a runway is used, because they can be used as taxiing. But it looks to me more like the runway on the left is the one they're using for takeoff, because there's one aircraft on it about midway up, and they could be landing or taking off. It's kind of hard to tell, but that's really the basics of an airport. So now you have that information. Again, this was a brief video just to get you introduced to some new concepts. All of this stuff we're going to keep repeating and adding more information to as you go along. So don't fret. We haven't given it all to you yet. So sit back and get ready for the next video. And until you get to that next video, happy studying.